In the quiet Polish village of Starowa Góra, just outside the city of Łódź, 5 members of a single family disappeared without a trace. It was April 2003. Danuta Bogdańska, a 66-year-old grandmother, her son Krzysztof, 42, his wife Bożena, 44, and their 2 children, Małgorzata and Jakub, all of them, suddenly gone. No warning, no calls, no struggle. They simply vanished. The disappearance wasn't noticed all at once. Neighbors first became suspicious when the mailbox started to overflow. The dog hadn't been walked, the curtains stayed drawn, and no one had seen the children in school. Eventually, police were contacted. When they entered the house, everything was in order. No signs of forced entry, no signs of violence, no personal items missing, aside from the family themselves. The refrigerator was stocked, clothes hung neatly in the closets, dishes were still in the sink. Nothing looked unusual, except for the silence. It was as if 5 people had gotten up in the middle of their lives and stepped into thin air. In this chapter, we begin with the facts. The last known days of the Bogdański family and the questions that continue to haunt Starowa Góra to this day. Before her name made headlines, before the city searched for answers, Ewa Tillman was simply a daughter, a sister, a friend. She was 26 years old. Born and raised in the small town of Ruda Rożeniecka, she later moved to Poznań to study and work. Friends described her as kind, reserved, and responsible. Someone who rarely drank, rarely stayed out late, and always let her family know where she was. She worked in administration for a chain of drugstores. She had her own apartment, paid her bills on time, and helped her younger brother when he moved in with her. Ewa's life was not dramatic. It was normal, steady, quiet. She had dreams of traveling, of settling down, of one day starting a family. She wasn't the kind of person to just vanish, and certainly not the kind of person to create chaos. That's why her disappearance sent shockwaves. Not just through her family, but through her workplace, her neighborhood, and eventually, all of Poland. People who knew her simply couldn't believe it. She didn't have enemies. She didn't live dangerously. And that night, she wasn't alone. In the next chapter, we'll examine what happened after Ewa vanished, and how her disappearance turned into one of the most debated investigations in Poland. The timeline of the Bogdański family's disappearance is fragmented and haunting. Neighbors recalled seeing Danuta walking her dog on the morning of April 10, 2003. It was the last confirmed sighting of any member of the family. Later that day, the curtains in their home were drawn shut, and by evening, the house appeared unusually quiet. But nothing seemed immediately wrong. Mail began to accumulate in the days that followed. The dog, often walked daily, hadn't been seen again. Garbage bins remained untouched. By April 15th, the children had not shown up for school in days. Teachers contacted the parents, but received no response. A concerned neighbor finally contacted the police. Officers arrived and entered the home. What they found was eerie in its normality. A meal had been partially prepared. Clothes were in the laundry. Shoes still lined the hallway, but no one was there. It didn't look like a family preparing for a trip. There were no packed bags, no goodbye notes, no signs of urgency. It was as if they had stood up in the middle of their day and vanished. There were no reported phone calls, no bank activity, no witnesses, no clues. The entire timeline of their disappearance has a strange stillness, like time had simply stopped inside that house. When the disappearance of the Bogdański family was officially reported, the local police began their investigation. Slowly at first. After all, there were no signs of foul play, no struggle, no evidence of a break-in. It was unusual, yes, but not urgent, at least not yet. But when days turned into a week with no word from any of the 5 family members, the case took on a new tone, one of concern and eventually fear. Search efforts began. Police combed the nearby forests, lakes, and rural roads. Dogs were brought in. Helicopters surveyed the surrounding areas. Friends and neighbors joined the search. Still, nothing. Interpol was notified. Missing persons alerts were issued, but the family had left no digital trail, no financial activity, no travel records, no passports were taken, no suitcases missing. It was as though they had been erased. The press covered the story briefly, but without developments, interest faded. And yet, the silence spoke louder than words. In the absence of evidence, speculation grew. Was it a planned escape? A collective suicide? A crime carefully covered up? Every theory was considered. None could be proven. And with every passing day, one question loomed larger. How does an entire family vanish without a trace? When facts go missing, speculation fills the void. In the case of the Bogdański family, the absence of evidence gave rise to a storm of theories, some plausible, others unsettling. The first was escape. Could the family have chosen to disappear voluntarily, to start over, possibly abroad? But that theory quickly collapsed under scrutiny. No passports had been taken, no vehicles were missing, no foreign relatives, no money withdrawn, and perhaps most telling, no reason. Those who knew them said there was no indication they wanted to leave. No debts, no fear, no secret plans. The second theory? Foul play. Was the family the victim of an organized crime or a targeted attack? Again, there was no sign of violence in the house, no enemies, no criminal ties. Still, some wondered, could someone close to the family have done something? Was there a secret none of them ever shared? Then came the more disturbing rumors that the family had been taken, trafficked, or worse, that they had fallen into something far beyond their control. One whispered theory claimed a member of the family had uncovered something, perhaps illegal or political, that made them a target. Another suggested something even darker, a cult, a ritual, or a pact. But these remained just that, rumors. Not a shred of proof ever emerged. The longer the case went unsolved, the stranger the stories became. And without closure, the line between truth and legend began to blur. Years have passed since the Bogdański family vanished, and yet, no breakthrough has ever been made. Not a single confirmed lead, no confession, no remains. It's as if they never existed at all. How is that possible? Many point to early failures in the investigation. The initial response by local police was slow. The lack of immediate signs of violence meant the case wasn't treated as urgent. Crucial hours, maybe days, were lost. Leads that could have been followed went cold. Surveillance footage was never collected. Witnesses were never properly interviewed. And then came bureaucracy. Coordination between regional and national authorities was limited. International alerts took time. Language barriers and outdated systems slowed progress even more. Even with Interpol involved, no meaningful evidence surfaced. Some critics believe that the very ordinariness of the family worked against them. They weren't rich, they weren't politically connected, They weren't dramatic. They were quiet. And so was the response. But beneath the silence lies something more troubling. A system that isn't always built to handle the unexplained. Disappearances like the Bogdanskis don't just challenge families, they challenge how we think about justice, closure, and truth. In the years since the Bogdański family disappeared, their names have faded from headlines. But not from memory. Not completely. Their case is rarely mentioned in the media now. New stories take its place. New tragedies. New names. But for those who knew them, or simply remember, the questions still linger. What happened to them? How can 5 people vanish, leaving no trace, no message, no goodbye? In their hometown of Starowa Gora, some still recall the family with quiet reverence. Teachers remember Małgorzate's curiosity. Neighbors remember Jakub's energy. Friends still speak of Danuta's discipline, Krzysztof's honesty, and Bożena's gentle kindness. For the rest of us, their story remains a cautionary tale, a reminder that not all mysteries have answers, and that some disappearances do not end with resolution, but with silence. That's why stories like theirs matter, because the act of remembering pushes back against that silence. It says, you were here, you were loved, you are not forgotten. Vanishing Echoes is dedicated to telling the stories that others forget, to giving voice to the quiet tragedies. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing to this channel and sharing these stories so that no one disappears without a trace. Memory is a form of justice.